All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shai by Hashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutation unto the hopeful elect, the 1/3 of Yasha Allah, upholding the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of their ability. Peace and salutation. This is the brother Bakwasha, and I want to cover something that was said by this guy named Mark Andreessen, and I'll read a little bit about how he makes his money. It says Mark Andreessen wealth primarily comes from co-founding Netscape, which popularized the internet browser and later led to the substantial acquisition by AOL, and from co-founding the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, also known as A16Z. It says he also made significant investments in early stage tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Airbnb. Now, the reason why I wanted to pull up his net worth is because these people base their power off of their money. And even you see this guy here, Peter Thiel or Thiel. And obviously one of the things that he's been able to do, it says, made his fortune through early and successful investments in technology companies, particularly PayPal and Facebook, and by utilizing a Roth IRA to maximize tax advantages. He also co-founded Planeteer Technologies, a data analytics company. Now, why are both of these guys speaking on the subject of immigration and AI? Well, I'm going to play a quick clip here in a second, but the reason why I wanted to highlight this guy, Mark Andreessen, is because he makes a comment, and he's made it on several podcasts, but he's made a comment which highlights the wickedness of these Edomites, and how although they may say one thing, or as scripture says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. And not only that, as scripture also says, but yet were they drawn swords. So this is a war, although it may be perceived or staged as just entertainment. Like these guys on these podcasts, they're really communicating a takeover. Okay. And that's been since the garden. Okay. That Esau, the so-called white man, was looking to slay his brother Jacob, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And that gift of the sword in which he's been given is not just in a physical sense, but it's in words, it's in contracts, it's in the subtlety of speech. Okay. And so I'm going to open up the lesson here in Psalm chapter 35, verse 7. And Lord will, this lesson will be edifying for the elect. It says, for without cause have they hid for me their net in a pit, which without cause they have digged for my soul. And that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear that this net, or this network, okay, of Edomites have been pitted against Israelites in everything that they do, whether it's a company, whether it's a technology, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a food, whether it's finances. All of these areas are nets, and there's networks of people that are geared against the hopeful elect, okay, pursuant to Psalms, the 83rd chapter. And it says, for without cause have they hid for me their net. And the hiding part is, if you don't know that you're Israelite, you continue to go headlong into these services and believe that they're for your benefit when they're not at all. Okay. It says, for without cause have they hid for me their net in a pit. And we typically talk about this word pit as being, this system, a place or a place where our people are going to be destroyed, right? Because that's the lowest level of life, right? When you're at the pit, there's no way out, and that's what you're going to hear here in this quick segment. It says, which without cause have they dig for my soul, because ultimately, as I made mention earlier, war is in their heart. Okay. Verse 8 says, let destruction come upon him at unawares, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself into that very destruction. Let him fall. So yeah, let's play. Like I said, this is a quick segment I'm gonna play, and then it basically, just to kind of set it up a little bit, they talk about how skilled labor to produce AI is going to be scarce. But even through affirmative action, which is another ploy that he throws out there to say this is a way to get so-called Negroes, Latinos and Native Americans, but specifically so-called Negroes, back to a quote-unquote level playing field. All of that is a lie, because then the colleges, the education system, these jobs have other ways to work themselves around really helping out Jake at all, and so that's the hidden net. The hidden net is they block out all of these entrances at ways of being able to sustain yourself, and then over the course of time, because there's no manual labor, there's no jobs, people literally are forced out of this system into a pit. Okay, so like I said, this is the subtlety, of the wicked, and we're gonna get, Lord will, a couple more scriptures, but I just wanted to kind of tee that up a little bit as brothers watch these two podcasts. So let me slide this back just a little bit.
American blacks. So then I discovered this New York Times article from 2004 called Blacks Are Being Admitted into Top Schools at Greater Numbers, but Which Ones?
Uh-oh.
And again, and by the way, this is in the New York Times. This is not a...
And that's the same dude right here, okay? And he's talking to Lex Friedman, which is another long nose.
And whatever, National Review, this is New York Times, 2004. And the two authorities that were quoted in the story are Henry Louis Gates, who's the dean of the African American Studies, community in the United States, super brilliant guy, and then Lani Guinier, who was a potential Supreme Court appointee under, I think, she was a close friend of Hillary Clinton, and there was, for a long time, she was on the short list for Supreme Court, so one of the top, jurists, lawyers in the country, both black. Sort of legendarily successful in the academic and legal worlds, and black, and they are quoted as the authorities in this story. And the story that they tell is actually it's amazing. And by the way, it's happening today in education institutions, and it's happening in companies, and you can see it all over the place, and the government. Which is, at least at that time, the number was half of the black admits into a place like Harvard were not American-born blacks; they were foreign-born.
So what he's saying is people that were admitted into Harvard were classified as black, although that was just skin color, right? But they weren't from America. So they would check the box for affirmative action, but they would hire or have admittance of foreign people that look black.
Or Henry Louis Gates, who's the dean of the African American Studies, community in the United States, super brilliant guy, and then Lani Guinier, who was a potential Supreme Court appointee under, I think, she was a close friend of Hillary Clinton, and there was, for a long time, she was on the short list for Supreme Court, so one of the top, jurists, lawyers in the country, both black, sort of legendarily successful in the academic and legal worlds, and black, and they are quoted as the authorities in this story, and the story that they tell is actually it's amazing. And by the way, it's happening today in education institutions, and it's happening in companies, and you can see it all over the place, and the government, which is, at least at that time, the number was half of the black admits into a place like Harvard were not American-born blacks. They were foreign-born blacks. Specifically, Northern African, generally Nigerian, or West Indian. Right. And by the way, many Nigerians and Northern Africans have come to the U.S. and have been very successful. Nigerian Americans as a group, way outperform. They're, this is a super smart cohort of people. And then West Indian blacks in the U.S. are incredibly successful. Most recently, by the way, Kamala Harris, as well as Colin Powell, just two sort of examples of that. And so basically what Henry Louis Gates and Lani Guinier said in the story is Harvard is basically struggling to either, whatever it was, identify, recruit, make successful, whatever it was, American-born native blacks. And so therefore they were using high skill immigration as an escape hatch to go get.
So they were using high skill immigration as an escape hatch to
blacks from other countries. And then this was 2004.
It says to get blacks from other countries. So once again, these corporations, these entities, they know that there's a difference between, and although they're merging, Nigerians and West Indians, which we know are also Israelites, okay, but they are targeting American-born Israelites, okay? So let's bring this out real quick because I just want to use this as an example, okay? This is Exodus 11:7. It says, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doeth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And so even at that time, the Egyptians, Cush, Ham, right? Mizraim, right? All of these, Egyptian black in skin tone, right? But the difference is they're still not Israelites. And so Esau knows these things, which is the reason why, although he has an affirmative action decree, which basically says, hey man, let's help out the people we've enslaved and, get them to a certain level. He still goes around that idea by hiring people that look black but are still not American born Israelite so-called Negroes. And that's the subtlety of the wicked, man. Okay. And he says the same thing. This was back in when was this? Oh, this is January 26, 2025. But he says the same thing 2 months later. Okay, this is at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. He says the same exact thing, except he goes a little bit deeper. So let's play this as well.
If you have AI, if you have advanced high productivity growth, if you have lots of robots running around.
And I got to slow this down because this dude talks very fast.
I do think there is a question of exactly how much low-skilled labor you need in the country.
So the question is, how much low-skilled labor do you need in the country when AI is booming? Because once again, all of his investments have been in tech, okay? Facebook, Twitter, Airbnb, right? And this is the same guy that's tied to Planeteer, Peter Thiel, right? As well, okay? And billionaires hang around billionaires, okay? Matter of fact, I didn't even see who else is on this list, okay? A whole bunch of crooked noses. But my point is this. Low skilled labor is talking about Israelites. And the question is, well, how much is necessary? So now that we have AI, that low skilled labor is going to be necessary to build, some of these factories, data centers, etc. But then they're going to be completely discarded after that. Okay, so I didn't want to go over that too fast, but let me play that one more time. And like I said, this is all just subtlety, because on the outset you would look and say, oh, well, this may be something favorable, but then you look at the snowball effect of our people not having any, and obviously this is not our rest, okay? But our people don't have any footing here to even just survive, because all of these systems, this pit, okay, is really just a net to engulf our people and bring them into this new world technology, okay, which is going to lead them to the Karagma, because they're not going to have any other resources available. This is just another form of high-tech slavery, man. Okay? But let's play that one more time.
If you have AI, if you have advanced high productivity growth, if you have lots of robots running around, I do think there is a question of exactly how much low skilled labor you need in the country, which bears on a lot of the immigration debates. The high skilled immigration debate is the one that's coming, and it's not really top of mind right now, but it's the one that's coming. And the reason it's coming is because, look, we need talent, of course, to build all the AI, build all the robots, to do all these things, and you see this in the debates around the universities, with the move that the administration is doing on foreign students and so forth. And there's this kind of very one-sided argument that's happening on that right now, which is you kind of need you need limited high-skilled immigration from the rest of the world, or you're not going to have like the smart people building stuff here. And I would say, look, like Joe, our portfolio at our firm is like the United Nations. It's founders from 100 countries. I benefited enormously by working in a place characterized by very high-skilled immigration. The thing that's really coming to roost, though, is sort of this fundamental issue, which kind of nobody wants to talk about, but I've started to talk about, which is it's the intersection of DEI and immigration that has really, I think, warped our perceptions on high-skilled immigration over the last 50 years. Which basically, and you see this, by the way, in like this, you look at like the foreign enrollment rates of the top universities, which went from like 2 or 3 or 4% 50 years ago to whatever 27 or 30 or 50.
And Columbia's over half, right?
70% or whatever it is. And so there's been this massive transformation in who gets educated, and then there's been this massive transformation of who gets admitted through affirmative action, and then as we now know it, DEI. And again, this goes straight to the political divide in the country, which is if you're a family, if you're parents of a kid where I grew up, and you've got a smart kid, and you think you're going to get them into, a top university in this country, like you are fooling yourself. Like there is no chance, right? Because they've got their, the top universities have basically an admissions program that looks like this. It's like DEI for white people, which is the donors and all the fake sports, right? And so
a lot of fake sports.
Like I have a friend who got into Yale to play varsity croquet, which let me just say is not a sport that we played a lot in rural Wisconsin. And then you've got DEI generally for the other groups, and then you've got this immigration influx, and as a consequence of that, like it is nearly impossible for somebody coming from like a Midwestern or rural background or Southern background to get into the U.S. By the way, this doesn't just affect white people. This also obviously we now see how it's affecting Jewish people, but it actually also affects African Americans.
So this is the same point that he made earlier this year, January 26th, okay, regarding what, and I have a transcript of it somewhere, yeah, and Lord will, I'll leave this, okay, but the point being here is the same thing in which he said in January, he's going to say, I guess this is 2 months ago, whatever, let's call it June, right? He says the same thing, but he's going to go into the detail as why, and this is the subtlety of Esau, man.
In a very interesting way, which is actually both the universities and the corporate employers are literally, this is true, they literally import Africans so that they don't have to hire African Americans.
There it is. Okay. They pay for people that look black to come to their university so they can check off a box for affirmative action. And the corporations do the same thing. And all of this is pitted towards Jake, man. Okay. This is Isaiah 32:7. The instruments also of the churl are evil. He devised wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speak right. These wicked devices, and like I said, this is very subtle. Okay. This is very nuanced. But what it does is the snowball effect is Jake never has a job ever, or those jobs are exclusively limited to a certain pay wage. Okay. Or the only job that you can ever get in the billions is you got to play sports, or you got to go to drugs and be a drug dealer, or entertainment. And all of those are still pits or systems that Esau controls as well. Okay. That's why this place is not our rest, man. Okay. Every turn, it's a snare. All right. So back in Isaiah 32:7, the instruments also of the churl are evil. He devised wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speak right. Psalms 10:2. The wicked in his pride doeth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. Okay. To have, like I said, I believe this guy's an Edomite. But to have this guy make an anecdote about it, but then go into, like I said, I'm gonna play it here in a second, as to why this is being done, goes to show you that they are confederate against thee. Let's just go ahead and grab that. Okay. This is Psalms 83, verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people. And I'm pretty sure when you get into that crafty word, it goes into shrewd or subtle or cunning. Okay. And consulted against thy hidden ones. Because all of these corporations and university like Harvard, Yale, all of these quote unquote Ivy League schools, right? They're running the same play. All right. It says Psalms 83:3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And it goes into all the rest of these other heathen nations. But the reason why I wanted to go into that is because these are the devices in which they have imagined, okay, of how to basically put our people into a pit and to leave us there to rot, you know. This is Isaiah 26:10. Let favor be showed to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. In the land of uprightness will he deal unjustly, and will not behold the majesty of the Lord. So everything that he's going to do is going to be unjust, man. Okay. But these are just scenarios that I wanted to go into, because I think I saw a feed pop up and it talked about how they're basically limiting the access of education. And like I said, I'm going to keep reiterating this. It has nothing to do with gaining education here or gaining a foothold in this world or making this place, our rest. Has nothing to do with that. I'm highlighting through the Spirit the shrewdness, the craftiness, the cunningness of Esau, the so-called white man, and how he does these things deliberately, but he will never broadcast these things. And so this is one of the roles of the prophets, to be a watchman, man, to see these things and to show our people the wickedness as to why Esau, the so-called white man, is going to be judged, right along with all the rest of these other heathen nations that are confederate against us. Okay? Yep. Okay, Con, let's get back and we'll play the rest of this real quick and then we'll wrap up.
Interesting way, which is actually both the universities and the corporate employers are literally, this is true, they literally import Africans so that they don't have to hire African Americans because they still count as black. There was a great story. The thing that woke me up to this.
They still count as black. At all costs, do not hire, do not educate, do not give any type of resource to Israelites. Wicked.
There was a story in the New York Times 20 years ago about Harvard. This is Harvard admits, black students, but which ones? Back when the New York Times could talk about these things honestly. And it quoted actually Henry Louis Gates and Lonnie Guinier at the time at Harvard Law School, basically observing that African Americans were not benefiting from affirmative action because Harvard had figured out that they could import Nigerians.
Boom. Harvard figured out that they can import Nigerians instead of complying with the affirmative action. Like I said, I mean, these are the things that the devil, is supposed to do. But why is it that they're doing it towards our people? Because he is the devil and he fits all the prophecies, man, of what the devil will do, right? And it shows also that there's a difference between Israelites because, and let me say this, he knows that there's a difference between Israelites born here in America versus Israelites that are scattered abroad. Okay.
Right. And again, it's just like, great. The Nigerians are great. They're very smart. They're very productive. It's fantastic. All other things being equal, you'd like to have as many of them in your country. But is that really why we're doing, the set aside programs? And so there is this really fundamental question, which is what level of untapped talent exists in this country that a combination of DEI and immigration have basically cut out of the loop for the last 50 years. And how long can we have this, story to everybody in the Midwest and the South that says, sorry, you're, because of historical oppression, your kids are SOL.
Right. So Esau is the devil, man. So by shutting off access to any type of stability or any type of way, it literally disenfranchises our people from any type of survival. Okay, we're literally shut up in a corner, okay, and then left to fend for ourselves. But while that's happening, nothing but drugs, dope, gangster, trap, black music is being flooded in our people's minds, man. It's wicked, bro.
This is the angry populism people are worried about. This is affecting our politics.
Yeah, what do you do? What do you do? From this is what I really come to appreciate from growing up in the one place and now being in the other place, which is if you're in the center of the country, you're just like, wow, these people really hate me. They really hate my kids.
It said, what was the first scripture we brought up? For without cause they have hid for me their net in a pit. Without cause they have digged for my soul. Because what does scripture say in Ezekiel the 35th chapter, man? It says, Ezekiel 35:5, it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force and of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So that perpetual hatred, man, is the same thing in which Esau displayed in the garden, man. Okay, this is Genesis chapter 3 verse 1. It says, now the serpent was more subtile than any beast of the field which the Lord Yahweh had made, and he said unto the woman, yea, hath Yahweh said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And now the reason why I want to go into the serpent is because that's Esau, the so-called white man, right? But it says it was more subtile. And then when you grab this word here, subtile, Let's grab that real quick.
Strong's H, 6175. Arum. Arum.
Arum.
Second entry. Arom. Arom.
Aram. It says subtle, shrewd, crafty, sly, crafty. But then the word here is cunning. Okay? Cunning, crafty, prudent, subtle. So when you go in Genesis 25 and 27, it says, and the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. So people may not look at this as cunning hunting, but it's blocking off resources, just like it was in Masada. Okay? Eliminating the access to water, to limiting the access to food and cattle. Okay? It's a siege. Okay? Which is a war strategy. Okay? But it's being perceived as something that, oh, well, yeah, affirmative action, man. See, look, we did it right here. We're helping out your people. But that's a cunning hunter. The word subtle and cunning are synonyms. Okay, let's bring that out one more time. This is the word here for subtle, arum or ram. It says cunning, usually in a bad sense. Crafty, prudent, subtle, right? Genesis 25:27, and the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. So that spirit of him having perpetual hatred, being a cunning hunter, none of that has changed. Okay? And I want to say, let's see here, when you get this word here, cunning, it goes into a learned.
Strong's H, 3045. Yadah. Yadah.
Yada, okay, which means to know. It says to learn, to know, to find out, etc. To be made known, to become known, to reveal. And then when you scroll down, you'll find be skillful in hunting. So the skill of hunting is not just to kill, it's also to what's the word? To create a drought of your prey. Okay? Because it weakens the prey. And we already know that what scripture says about what Jacob was going to, what Esau was going to do to his brother Jacob. And we'll wrap up on this. This is Genesis 27, and I'll start at 38. It says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me, also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, cunning hunter, subtle beast. Who is he hunting when all the other nations are in confederacy with him and are consulting and making one consent? It says, and by thy sword shall thou live, and shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Verse 41, it says, and Esau hated Jacob perpetually, pursuant to Ezekiel 35:5. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. Now that makes perfect sense as to why you would go and hire people that look black versus people that are and not black in color. But obviously we know that we're Israelites, okay? Because black is just a term in which Esau created for our people, okay? Black is not a nationality. Black doesn't have a heritage. It doesn't have a lineage, okay? It doesn't go back to a seed, okay? So that explains, it says, and Esau, Genesis 27:41, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. And he's been on that quest ever since. And that's why war is in his heart, you know? So Lord will, like I said, this was edifying for the elect. It's just a very subtle nuance that I had caught through the Spirit and wanted to just bring out just to show that, yeah, this, these swords that Esau uses, scripture talks about, bitter words, but it's to shoot at the perfect. Let's just end out on that. Okay. These bitter words are to shoot at the perfect, man. Okay. Those that have the blessing that he's still seeking with tears, man. This is Psalm 64 verse 2. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. We've been going into that the whole while. From the insurrection of the workers of iniquity. Okay? Because that's what they're doing. Who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. Okay? Because on the outset, looks like, oh, affirmative action, man. Yeah. But then backing that up is AI, DEI, right? Diversity. But the diversity only continues to talk about other people. It doesn't, none of this applies to Israelites. Okay? It says, this is Psalm 64:3, who whet their tongue like a sword. Once again, the fatness of the earth, the gift of the sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret. See? And I wonder if we get this word here, secret. It goes right back to more subtlety, man, more cunningness. Because when you're a cunning hunter, okay, you wear camouflage, you go out in the middle of the night, you have all of these infrared, devices, things like that, just like in The Predator, the movie The Predator, man. You didn't want to be seen, you wanted to sneak up on people and murder them, and no one would be the wiser. Just like it is with this, jump shot, man, to be untraced in his murder. Okay. That's why even in the garden, he thought he had got away with murder when it came to Abel. And the Lord was like, bro, what you doing, man? Like, I see you. And that's what's going on now. The prophets of Yahweh Shemiah Shah, man, they see Esau for everything in which he's doing, man. But this is the word for secret, hiding place, protection, for perpetration of crime. Wow. And we went out, we brought that out on the block this past week. Okay. Esau's trying to hide himself from the crimes in which he's done. Okay. It says a concealer. Okay. Or secretly. So yeah, it says that they may shoot in secret, meaning the crime, the perpetration of a crime, that they may shoot in secret, like a hunter hides in the blinds. They call them blinds. Why do they call them blinds? They call them blinds because to most animals, they're not looking up in the trees, or they're not looking at the landscape to differentiate between a branch that's a real branch versus a fake branch. They have duck calls. They put fake ducks out there, decoys. Okay. It says that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. So this is Esau looking to get his lick back, man. But through the Spirit, Yahweh Shemiah Shai is setting him up for the ultimate downfall. So Lord will, this lesson was edifying for the elect. Till next time, shalom.